I'm your host, Chantel, a 1-3 manifesting generator, small business strategist, workshop facilitator, and the author of the Aligned Action series of workbooks for solo entrepreneurs. This podcast is my active learning experiment. I'm so curious about how we all experience entrepreneurship as individuals, while we're also satisfying our desire for self-awareness. It's very true to my profile as a 1-3 who wants to figure everything out. Each episode is a profile of a human design enthusiast / business owner who's here to share how their personal profile lines influence their business journey. Today, my conversation is with Jennifer, a brand strategist, designer, and sociologist. With a whopping 15 plus years of experience, she's a powerhouse in refining and revamping brands to perfection. As a certified NLP practitioner with a background in graphic design and an MA in sociology, Jennifer blends elements of personal healing and self-discovery with strategic sociological analysis and creative brand development. Based in Switzerland, she communicates loud and fast in English and German, and she swears for emphasis in several other languages. Have a listen while today's guest, Jennifer, a 5-1, shares her story while you read between the lines. So, Jen, one thing that us one lines seem to have in common is this pull towards self-discovery. What has that been like for you, and how do you infuse it into your work?
Oh, God. You start easy with the questions, don't you? I'd say I've always been very curious. So even when I was a little girl, I would be the one asking, why, a gazillion times. I always wanted to understand the world around me. And then in my late 20s, I burnt out the first time. And that was really kind of like, oh, okay, maybe as much as I try to understand the outside world, I should also understand more about me. Not in a sense of like identity or anything. Like I have a defined Chi center, so I'm good. But more like, okay, why do certain things keep happening? With my burnout, I went the traditional route of counseling and speech therapy. And the more I delve into things, I realized, oh, okay, I also need more like somatic modalities to make more sense of things. And I always had a drawn to the woo-woo world. Like my mom was very into astrology. I was very into tarot from a very early age. So that always came kind of natural to me. And then it was only, I think, 3 years ago when I discovered human design. And I approached it with curiosity, as I do all new modalities and tools, and just be like, what does this have to say? What can I take from this that resonates? And there were a lot of things where I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Yes, this totally makes sense. And there were other parts where I'm still trying to figure out how this plays out in my life. Overall, I'd say I'm very, very curious about why I do what I do, why people do what they do, hence also the sociology as a university major. When I started my own business, I had a lot of, especially women entrepreneurs who, with a lot of them, there was this piece missing of, well, I can give you the strategy, but the strategy ain't work. There was something missing, kind of like, let's call it prep work. Something you need to prep before you're actually doing the work.
Right.
And so I started infusing more and more of what I learned and the modalities I've trained in, like NLP or tapping, into the work I do and blend it. And yeah, it really helps me understand my clients better, and it helps them to become more grounded and more confident in what they're putting out into the world. So they know it's not just like, oh, Jen is not just going to do a glitzy branding for me, but it's actually something I can embody and something I'm like fully owning, and not just like a pretty surface.
For sure. As someone who used to do branding, it can't just be pretty. It has to have meaning. Substance is just so integral to me. And it sounds like we've had similar experiences where clients come in and they're like, I want watercolor and I want script. And I'm like, okay, but what is that based on? Like, why though?
Yeah.
Other than everyone else has one that looks like that. Why?
Yes. And I had to learn that too, not with creativity. Maybe I should start with, I'm a 5-1 self-projected projector. It's fun. And I have like 2 defined centers, which is the G and the throat, and everything is undefined. Yay. And creativity was always kind of like, that's my thing. That's my channel. That's my defined centers. That's all, like, yes. But I had to do a lot of like questioning, especially businessy things or strategy things, where I'm like, everyone is doing this. Do I actually really want to be doing this? Like, why? Ooh, okay. Do I just do it because I think I should do this? I don't know. Always learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in doing that for yourself, it also probably gave you a lot of insight into how you're going to create the experience for your clients too, right? If you're doing all of that self-questioning, all of a sudden then it shows up in your process. At least that's how it was for me. I started doing
Yes,
those
it
things for
does.
myself, and then I was
Or
like,
hopefully it
oh,
does.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are the parts of your process then with clients that are maybe different than another brand designer who, say, doesn't have the one line or the five line or the projector element?
I'd say it starts even before I work with clients. I only do what feels fun to me, what feels really exciting, what makes me go like, yes. And this can be like something super nerdy or like a design challenge or a product that I'm like, I don't understand anything about this product. It can be all over the place, right? It just has to give me that kind of spark where I'm like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm intrigued. Tell me more. So it starts there with being really selective and rather saying no a few more times than I might feel comfortable with, because I know something doesn't feel right. And I learned and I paid my dues in the past when something wasn't feeling right. It would always come back up and kind of like sneak its way into.
Uh,
So I'm more selective for sure. Also because I decided I don't want to go all the time. So that's surely a big thing. And in my work, I'd say when someone's starting out, obviously with a new business, then I'm kind of like, I've walked the path. I mean, I'm self-employed now since 2017. So yes, I have some experience. So yes, I'm walking ahead of you, but at the same time, I'm in the trenches with you. I know what is required to ask yourself all those nagging little questions all the time. And I think that really creates a lot of empathy for where my clients at. And I remember how icky it felt to ask those questions and to feel like, do I have to burn everything to the ground? Or like, why do I keep doing certain things? Why do I feel shame? Why do I feel resentment? Why, like, all these things come up. And I mean, I was the master brush it under the carpet. Like, I mean, I excelled at this until my floor was very bumpy and it didn't work anymore.
Right.
And then it was kind of like a volcanic eruption. So I feel great empathy in the work that I do. And especially as a projector, I have clients telling me it's kind of like you see me. And that is the greatest compliment, because when I was growing up, I always felt kind of like a misfit of like, I don't think anybody actually knows me. And that's very inner circle. I mean, for example, my parents have no idea what I'm doing, or well, like, and it's also to some extent just because they don't really care. But so that kind of like where the gifts come in as a projector. And when I come in maybe with a new client and we're talking brand and business, I quickly see kind of like the bigger picture, the puzzle pieces,
Right.
how it all blends together and how I see the world, right? And that really resonated with me back when I first heard about human design. That kind of like deconditioning process of, oh, my worth is not measured by how much I do, which was like added to the heart, because growing up, I've always been praised not for who I am, but for what I did. The good grades in school, like the very classic, I don't know, 80s parents train. So yeah, I'd say those are definitely one of the key things that might make me different from people who aren't projectors or who are generators or whatever. Ultimately, there are a gazillion of people who can do your branding, right? I really focus more on, is it like a value match? Do I like you? Do you like me? Because we will be having tough conversations. And if you're like, I don't really like that face of hers, it's going to be hard.
It's already
So
hard. It's going to be harder. Yeah.
it's going to be even harder, and you're going to resent the process. And if you're
Right.
resenting the process, it's going to be tough to follow through, because branding, at least as I understand it, it's not a quick fix. You're setting yourself up for success in the long run. So you got to have some stamina. And if it's just a struggle the entire time and you have no pleasure from any of the process, I know I wouldn't be able to pull through. Like, no. Mm-mm.
Right. Yeah.
So I always try to make it fun. Maybe the Enneagram 7 in me.
I like how you put that. Now that you say that, I think I definitely did screen clients for that willingness to go deep without it being a conscious thing. But that's definitely true, especially because when you're designing something, there's no point in designing a brand that is like focused on trends and that's only going to last you a year. There's no point in doing that. It's not good for your brand and business long term. So in order to design something that stands the test of time, that's where that depth has to come in, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I'm sure we agree on like a lot of these
if you want to do something epic, it's not enough to have like a hand lettering font, right? Like you could do a hand lettering font, but I really want you to be intentional about it, why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And as you've said, it was just kind of like, does this like make sense to me, or am I getting the answers I want to hear, and not just like, oh, I just choose hand lettering because it's pretty. Okay, sure. You can do that. And that is okay if you want to do that. But then I might not be the right person for you. I kind of resent the notion of done for you branding. I get what it means in the business world. And in a strict sense, yes, I do it for you. But branding ultimately, in my understanding, needs to be about co-creation.
Absolutely.
Because I cannot tell you who you are. I can help you figure it out. I can ask you a lot of questions. I love asking questions. But if you're not willing,
one lines.
I mean, 5-1 to the T, right? Like, yes. But if you're not willing, or if it's just not the right time to dig for answers, then like chat me up when it's the right time. And no hard feelings, right? I mean, I just recently worked with someone who first entered my world, I think 18 months ago, something like that. So like ridiculously long lead times, whatever. And every kind of online business coach would tell you like, nah, move on, whatever. And it's just like, well, no, if it wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right time. And if there will be a right time and our paths will like meet again, then that's cool. If not,
I wonder if that's a one-line thing, because my sales cycles have always been long too. Yeah, I think it's the depth factor, right? Like, because everything is deeper, it takes longer to dig into. I can tell just from reading your bio and being in your world for a little while that you have a lot of creative interests, passions, as one lines do. What is interesting to you right now as a line one, and how's that guiding you presently in your business?
Oh, I'd say, well, everything. I think it's 2 years ago now or 3 years ago, where I closed down a lot of things in my business and just really did like, I'm going to do what feels fun. And right now, fun feels like having more intimate spaces, more one-on-one conversations, like I do with my podcast. I have a coach. I do capacity work with her. She's also informed in human design. When I told her, I just had this idea, I'm going to do a podcast. She was like, yeah, of course you do. I'm like, could you just fake a little bit surprised? Like, please, just for like the sake of it. And she's like, well, I mean, you have a defined throat and like a 5-1, like, and you're self-projected projector. Of course, you're going to do something where you're just going to talk it out. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But still, make some surprise, please. Yeah. So that's that. I'd say with the 5-1, what is still a lesson is kind of like the whole selfless helper theme of the 5-1. If you are in my world, whether paid or unpaid, friend or client, I am your biggest effing cheerleader. I'll be there on the sidelines. Like, I'll go just, and from the small things to the big things. I mean, last Sunday, I drove 45 minutes, which for US people is like, but for Switzerland, it's far. To see my 4-year-old goddaughter play a sheep and like in a nativity scene church thingy. And all she did, I mean, she was adorable. I mean, I love it. All she did was say meh 3 times, right? Like, don't care. I'll be there. I'll be like cheering you on hard. So that's surely the 5-1, where I'm also kind of like having to learn not all the world's problems are my problems to solve and fix, which is still something. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to
say that's an ongoing thing where on one hand, I have built up intentional boundaries to not be like, let's have free coffee chat idea. Give me some ideas on my business things.
Right.
And at the same time being like, no, I'm going to take myself out of this. Sounds like a you problem.
Yeah. I'm sure that you have heard that 5 lines can sometimes be misinterpreted or perceived incorrectly. Has this happened to you in your entrepreneurship experience?
Yeah, I'd say it surely was when I was growing up. It was something that felt too familiar of the whole feeling like a misfit and people don't get it. People don't get me, which was kind of like a fast track into resentment and really like my not self bitterness. The more I follow what feels fun and light for me and feels aligned to me, the less this is occurring. I do
Shining
see
light.
this. Yeah, I do see there. I do see that there's a relation between the two. And I'm not just a projector, right? Like, I mean, I am a fully flawed human and I'm a double Gemini and I'm an Enneagram 7. And sometimes I'm like all excitement, all bubbles. And then I'm like, okay, chill. And then in those cases where I'm like super excited and really kind of like steamrolling people, yes, those moments are the biggest potential for misunderstanding or just like, she's a bit intense. I grew up hearing she's so much. She's a bit much. A lot. Yeah. She's so loud. Loud in like loud voice, loud in like the way I dress or whatever. So yeah, of course, in my teenage years, this was like dagger to my heart. And now I'm like, move on. It's fine. If I'm too much, like, move on. I mean, I am civilized. I am fully socialized. This is like kind of me watered down to a degree where I'm sociable, but still kind of like me. If it's too much for you, well, good luck. Let's go on.
Have you seen that meme? I'm forgetting the creator right now. If I'm too much, go find less.
Yeah. I want to have this stitched on a cushion or something. Yeah, I mean, go find less. Like, I mean, I'm truly, honestly, at a point, I'm turning 40 next year, where I'm like, no hurt feelings. If I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. You probably will not be mine either, but it's fine. Too loud, too creative, too bubbly, too obnoxious, too whatever. It's okay. Yeah. Move on.
That's a realization many of us are having after the couple first years of business have passed. You know, there's like a lot of big learnings in that phase. And then there's like this quieter acceptance. I feel like that's the mid-range entrepreneurship, plus just the age. I'm 37. I think as we keep going, that just becomes so much more comfortable.
Yeah, we got less time for
absolutely
BS. So like, no time for this. Yeah. Yes, to all of that. I have one client. Granted, she's in her mid-20s. So definitely like a whole different generation. But anyway, she also has a different upbringing. Like she truly has like, I don't give a rat's about whatever anyone thinks. I'm going to do me. And that was something that was instilled unconsciously or consciously by her parents. I don't know her parents when she was in her formative years, right? Like that complete awareness of self and with no feelings of shame. No, I am not worthy of success, of love, of whatever kind of stories that so many of us have. And I really met this rare unicorn. I was like, that is amazing. I love this for you. I mean, she has other, like everyone has their backpack of things to struggle through.
Right.
She is no exception. But that was just really like, oh, okay, nice. You can also have this instilled, not through burning out, burning everything to the ground. Like,
right.
Yeah. So I'm like,
we love that for her.
Love this for her.
Yeah. What are some of the things, maybe of the other aspects of your human design chart that you feel like you really resonate with strongly?
Yeah, as I've said, like my worth is not measured in how much I do. That deconditioning was painful. Another one, the self-projected. I do talk to myself, like when I'm in the car, I just have conversations with myself, which really helps me work through my inner space. Whereas like journaling doesn't do anything for me. Like I can write pages and pages and pages. Like I did morning pages, I did everything. It's not my modality, it's not my tool. And the funniest, I always joke with a business coach of mine. We have this kind of like running joke of where I leave her like 5 to 15-minute voice messages. Basically just me going through the things, and me ending with, thanks, that was very helpful. And she just replying, you're welcome. Like, do you actually want to know what I think, or are you good? Yeah, I'm good. Thanks very much. I mean, sometimes I'm like, okay, this is now happening again and again. Please tell me, what do you think? But often it's really like the sounding board thing. That was big realization of like, oh, that's why I keep talking to myself. It's not because something in my brain is not firing correctly, but it's actually my process. So that was really resonating with me. So I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Sounds like you felt empowered to be your own sounding board.
Yeah, self-projected makes total sense. Yeah, and also the whole rebel brain. If someone tells me, you should not do this, I'm like, oh, you better watch me do exactly that. Like, so that doesn't work. And that's why also me and corporate didn't really work so well, because yeah.
Us entrepreneurs like to chart our own paths.
Yep. And it's just really like the being, having the multi-passions, the multi-interests. I mean, I have one defined channel, that's the 1/8, the channel of inspiration. That really resonated with me, like just with having different inspirations and passions. I've always been, more or less, I've always been fat. And something I would hear so many times, oh, you're so brave. Which I'm like, don't ever. But that's another discussion. But anyway, but more to the point of like, oh, you're so brave for like going to the pool. You're so brave for, I don't know, surfing. You're so brave for whatever, doing normal things. And I'm like,
right, just existing in your body.
Existing in this world is apparently brave if you're in a fat body. Gotcha. But it's more like that was never an issue for me. I would just be like, I want to do this. Sounds fun. Let's do it. Right. And that kind of like being true to yourself thing, probably part with the defined G, was just like, why wouldn't I? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And kind of like another side of that coin, which I sometimes still think it's so funny, because I was never one of the cool kids in school. And also people who say they're cool or say they're funny, they're not. But like sometimes, and that's why I started adding this little chance favorite things category to my monthly newsletter, because I would get messages of like, oh, I don't know, what are you wearing? Where's that bag from? What kind of skincare you're using? All these things. And I'm like, why would you care? Like, and then I kind of like read that, and kind of like as being like the channel of inspiration, apparently it's kind of like the natural born influencers. I'm like, okay, totally not an influencer, but okay, let's give the people what they want.
Right.
But it's like, that still feels odd to me that people would care. Maybe another aspect that was really exciting, the personality sun gate. Mine is the 35, the gate of change. So I need new experiences. Like, I don't want to do things twice. If I do have to do things twice, you will really get me mad. The way I spend my money, I rather spend on experiences. And knowing this helped me budget the way.
Interesting.
Right? Yes, I do like pretty things, but I'm definitely more an experience spender. If you're like, Friday, should we go to Disneyland tomorrow? Yes. Heck yes, let's go. Like all in. And that really helped me to also kind of like be at peace with that of I need change. Change is good for me. Whereas sometimes in more traditional education society, you shouldn't switch your job every year. That's not good for your resume. Oh, no,
Right.
no, all those things. I'm like, this is not working. I don't want to stay in this job for the next even 3 months, let alone 3 years or 30 years. Like,
yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, you got to honor that. And I agree. Entrepreneurship is a beautiful place to do that because, like you said, a couple of years ago, you really changed what you were offering. You close things, you open new things. There's all those possibilities that we have to keep existing as a business, but still following those new passions. Because, yeah, as a one line, that's going to change. What I'm interested in learning about is different now than it was before.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some things that still feel intriguing after doing them for 12 years.
Right.
When I start something, I almost follow it with like an obsessive, with a level of obsession.
Yeah.
That is like borderline unhealthy. And then it kind of like fades out until it becomes something
reasonable.
A more regular rhythm or something. For example, when I was 28, I thought like, oh, I'm going to learn to play the violin. That sounds like fun. And I remember the first 3-4 months, I was obsessed. I would always play it. I would always listen to music. And then it kind of like faded out a bit, peaked again, faded out a bit. And now 12 years later, I'm still taking lessons every week and I love it. And I also had to come to terms with what does this mean that I'm kind of like that. I have with everything I do, I have a certain flow in it. And to kind of like be acceptive of that and just saying, yes, that's just how I roll. It doesn't have to make sense. As long as it feels good to me, it makes sense for me.
Yes.
To kind of like dive deep into the rabbit hole. I also do that with languages. And it's so funny. Sometimes I have a dear friend. She doesn't live here, so we don't see each other like a lot. But she's at the point where she's no longer like, wait, what? Why? Like, for example, so I was learning Japanese a few years ago, and I was like all the way deep down. And then when I was seeing her next, she knew I was learning Japanese. And then she was like, oh, how is your Japanese going? And I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm learning Arabic now. And she's like, okay, cool. Right. Like, and it's not that I speak Japanese in any kind of mastery or whatever. Like, absolutely not. But it's, I just have certain things where I'm allowing myself to kind of like be that, I don't know, that, I mean, if the visual that comes to mind is also gonna tell my age, in the movie American Beauty, where there's like that white plastic bag flowing in the wind. I have to allow myself certain things. I do just like that. Like, let's see where the wind blows.
Yes.
And where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally a one-line thing. We have to allow ourselves ideas as indulgences, I think.
Yeah, not everything has to be a business or anything at all. It can just be.
I know exactly what you're saying about the phases. There's so many things I did to just an insane degree for such a long time. And then I let them go and people are like, don't you miss it? I'm like, no.
Yeah, no,
I don't.
Moved on. It's okay.
I've moved on passions ago, right? About 5 months ago or so, I started getting these signals that I want to go and spend some time in Portugal. You know, all of the advice of like trying to immerse yourself in the things that you want, like all the manifestation advice, right? And so I was like, oh, perfect. I'll just learn to speak Portuguese. No big deal, right? And I threw myself into Duolingo. And I was into it. I don't know if you've done Duolingo before, but I was like racking up all this.
I've been advised not to use it. And I think it's a smart advice.
Probably. Okay. Because I deep dove for like, I think 14 weeks or so. It had me very much in its grip. I spent a lot of time on it. And I moved quickly through the lessons and like I practiced a lot. And like I'd also kind of hacked how to get the most points. Like I was very into the gamification of it. And I made it through all the way up to the Diamond League and won the Diamond League. And then I thought, okay, that's it. I'm satisfied now. And it's not that I don't want to learn anymore because I do, but I don't need that part of it anymore. I don't need it to occupy this hour of my day anymore. What feels sometimes like bottomless pit, that like one lines of learning, you know, like it had actually reached its top. It actually was filled. So that's satisfying.
Yes.
That's rare and kind of lovely.
Yeah.
And so I was able to let it go
so
a bit, you know, and so now I'm still doing it, but it's not 4 hours of screen time a week. I do my one lesson a day and then I move on, and that's the cycle as you described, right? Next month, it'll be some other thing where I've got to go just full into something, and who knows what that'll be.
Oh yeah. No one knows. I mean, it could be anything. I don't know. I was really into making my own kombucha at some point.
Oh, nice.
But then
I'm currently experimenting with bubble tea.
Oh, you're giving me ideas, girl. But maybe something like what you said about the bottomless pit. If any other ones are listening in, what I had to learn is it always seems like a bottomless pit, right? Like that rabbit hole. But the funny thing is, you never know when you're gonna reach bottom. Your level of this is enough. This is good.
Yeah.
You only reach it if you're actually doing the things. You cannot think about learning Portuguese. You cannot strategize about learning Portuguese. You actually have to start learning Portuguese, learn the violin, learn how to make kombucha or bubble tea, whatever, until you come to your satisfaction level and you're like, yeah, that's okay now. I'm good. I can move on.
I agree. You just got to let it happen. That's great advice for 5-1s and for 1-lines out there.
Yeah, right. Because I don't know, we're so in this capitalistic society of everything needs to be a side hustle or at least an Etsy shop. And sometimes when you ask people, actually, what's your hobby? People look at you with like blank faces and be like, watching Netflix. Like, that's not really a hobby though. Unless you're like, I don't know, writing reviews for series or something about series and stuff, but it's just Netflix and chill. I don't know, it's not really a hobby. Also, like going to the gym excessively might not be a hobby. So, and then people like, ugh. So it feels so and like an indulgence. Like, oh, I'm learning how to make bubble tea. To a lot of people, this will sound like such a waste of resources, and it's like, no, it's just your process. You will learn something from making bubble tea that you will infuse somewhere else, maybe.
What a beautiful pun.
Advice. Yeah. Right? I mean, I got my way with words. I got my way with words. You will infuse it somewhere else. You cannot make this thing up before. That's not how it works. And you can also not like make it up on your vision board or something. You got to be in the trenches. You got to be out there doing the things.
Yes, definitely. Well, this has been absolutely lovely. We are going to close out the show with our ritual affirmation cards created by Christina from Glow Glow Juice HD. You and I will take a deep breath in together, and then we'll let that go in a sigh. The card that I've drawn today reads, I have an incredible ability to see unique solutions. Can I trust that the right people and opportunities will find me?
Oh, yes, this is beautiful. Yes, strongly resonates. I'd say yes. You can always trust that the right people will find you. And then again, the key is just make sure they find you when you're doing something you love doing, right? Because that's how you create the invitation. That's something we haven't talked yet. Projector thing of like waiting for the invitation, but it's actually just that you're doing things you love doing, and trust that the people come into your life when you're doing something you love and you're at your most aligned or most magnetic or whatever you want to call it. And then they're like, yes, whatever she's having, I want some, right? And with that, especially if you're new in business, I'm not saying it cannot happen quickly, but you might need a bit of stamina to go through this process of trusting And you might need to figure out a plan on how to pay your bills for 12, 18 months, whatever. Trusting that doing whatever it is you're called to do, that people will cross paths in ways that you could not have foreseen before.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. If people listening want to cross paths with you, where can they find you?
My social hub is my website, Jenny from E. From there, you can get to all sorts of fun places. If you want to get more, if you're more on the fun side, definitely come say hi on TikTok. It's Jennifer Walter on all social media. I also hang around a lot on Instagram, new on Threads, because that has just been released here in Europe. So come say hi. And of course, if you're like, want to hear more me talking with other guests, then you're more than welcome to listen in on The Scenic Route, which is my podcast where we talk everything from business to mindset and in between, and share a lot of, I really blew this off so you don't have to. Thank you so much for having me, Chantel. It was really, really a cool hour.